Hey there, dissectors. Let me ask you something. Can you imagine being so terrified by something that you run away in fear? Well, today we're delving into the paranormal dark history of Malvern Manor, exploring what went on inside this old property that had experienced paranormal investigators fleeing in the night, refusing to return. What scared them so much? Said to be around 10,000 square feet, Malvern Manor was originally named the Cottage Hotel, a family-owned business offering a warm meal, comfortable rooms, and only for $2 per night. What a bargain. Opening its doors for the first time in the 1880s, business was good for a time, as the busy railroad station close by brought travellers from all over to rest up at their hotel. As we're aware by now, with the rise of popularity of automobiles, railroads were used less and business began to suffer for the Cottage Hotel, and eventually they were forced to shut their doors. After a while, it was bought and converted into a convalescent home, treating people with conditions ranging from addiction to schizophrenia. But sadly, the owners of the new business, now rebranded as Malvern Manor, barely made enough money to get by. Maybe born out of resentment, the patients began to suffer with acts of neglect, and it didn't take long for stories of abuse to circulate amongst locals. Now, no one is 100% clear on what abuse happened inside those walls. Maybe it was covered up. There is said to be evidence, though, still lingering around on the second floor of the property, with visible bloodstains smeared all across the walls as well as the carpet. Clear signs that something terrible took place, and making you wonder what other atrocities occurred behind closed doors. Many believe that the mistreatment of the patients is what has led Malvern Manor to have the haunted reputation that it does. And if what we've learned so far is anything to go by, the residents had good reason. Paranormal events over the years have become a common occurrence at Malvern Manor, with visitors reporting objects moving, lights flickering, being touched, pushed and pinched, as well as hearing voices and footsteps in the darkness. So which spirits are known to haunt here, and what is their story? We begin with a spirit known as the Lady in White, and is thought to have been called Rose in life. It's believed that she was sent to Malvern Manor by her husband after she started to become obsessed with the idea that he would leave her as he was no longer attracted to her. This obsession is thought to have led to madness. While Rose was at Malvern Manor, no treatment seemed to help her recover, with staff members often finding her standing in front of her mirror, slowly pulling out chunks of her own hair. Situated at the opposite end of the nurse's hallway, people have visited Rose's room only to discover her still standing in front of the mirror, abusing herself with a look of total devastation on her face. Her story is one that is truly heartbreaking. What made her hate herself so much, do you think? Did her husband pass comments, or did he look at other women? Or was it a mental disorder that made her see herself differently from what she truly looked like? One of the most famous ghosts that haunts Malvern Manor is simply known as Grace. This poor woman spent her life at the facility and was said to suffer from mental illness and multiple personalities. Now, you might wonder how the staff came to know about her many personalities, and the story behind it is quite alarming. You see, one evening, staff members were walking by her room when they heard a man's voice, said to sound rough and gravelly. Over and over again, the voice repeated the words, "The devil's coming to get me." When the staff entered Grace's room, they discovered that the voice was coming from the woman herself, and this was just one persona she had. Visitors to the room today have described it as one of the most haunted in the building, with reports of almost nightly activity coming from the area. Due to her many personalities, you can never be sure which character is going to be coming through on any given night, and EVP has picked up on multiple voices from Grace's room. I never thought about that before. When we die, we're said to remain the same in character as we were in life. But what about someone who suffers from multiple personalities? Now, that is truly scary, especially if the person was known to be violent. One of the most chilling hauntings is apparently made up of the energy left behind by hundreds of disturbed patients, thought to have been feeding on the negative energy of the abused. This entity is sometimes seen, but more often felt, as an overbearing presence, especially in the rooms situated below the attic, and there is a good reason for this, it seems. It's believed that in rooms 17 and 18 on the second floor, a patient was physically and sexually abused by another patient for many, many years before staff finally figured out what was going on. Now, I'm sure you can imagine the energy the poor victim was giving off during this horrible period, and the entity was hungrily feeding off it the entire time. Still on the second floor of the property, you will find the ghost of a man named Hank. But you might want to think twice about searching for him, especially if you're female. You see, Hank apparently despised women, and ladies who have ventured into his room have experienced much more than any men. Hank was so spiteful that he was said to throw rocks out of his window at children passing by. But the creepiest thing about this ghost is that you can still find his clothing in the top drawer of the dresser in his room. Now, the nurses' station area is often considered the heart of any hospital, with comings and goings happening all day long. Over the years, many members of staff at Malvern Manor have experienced something paranormal, and when the paranormal lockdown premiered, a former nurse reached out. On the show, it was reported that dark shadows would rush at people around the nurses' area, and it seems the former member of staff had an idea of who the culprit might be. You see, she informed the paranormal investigators that during her time, there was a 6-foot-tall patient at the end of the hallway in room 2. He was a troublemaker, you might say, who loved nothing more than chasing the nurses menacingly all the way from the nurses' station to the kitchen. That would be horrible, especially with everything we've discussed so far. Going to work each day, fearing you could be attacked, abused, chased. I hope they got paid enough. Lastly, we have the story of a young girl named Inez, who was just 12 years old when she died. Now, not much is really known about this child, except that she was found with a jumping rope tied around her neck and a folding chair close to her. Recordings of her name have been heard around the manor on EVP, but the strange thing is, she never died at the manor, but at a house close by. What caused the child to haunt Malvern Manor? Did she know someone who lived there, or was she fascinated by the place? No one knows. This really is an interesting property, and wow, what a history attached to it. Even though the reports of abuse were kept secret, there is plenty of evidence from the blood to the reports of rape and other atrocities. Hopefully, one day these spirits can find the peace that they desperately yearn for. Well, except Hank. He's still living his best afterlife with clothes in the drawer and a grudge to settle. Maybe he'll grow tired in the end and find himself some rest. We can but hope. What do you think of Malvern Manor? Was there a spirit that spooked you out the most? No pun intended. For me, it was probably Grace, though the dark entity is a close second. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, my friends. And as always, stay safe out there.